Okay, now welcome to this second part of our video lecture for the second week of Internet Computing and Internet Programming class. In this video, I would like to show you, to talk to you about Microsoft Visual Studio and Microsoft Visual Web Developer. And essentially, we're using the 2010 edition, and I'd like to show you also how to install. Download first and install the Express edition of Microsoft Visual Web Developer and Microsoft Server SQL Server 2008 Express edition. Microsoft Visual Studio is essentially a development system suite that contains a lot of programming and software development packages and applications, from Visual C++ to Visual Basic to Visual C# to Visual Web Developer. We use essentially the Visual Web Developer for our ASP development or web development applications and projects. Although conceptually speaking, you could use any text editor to develop an ASP.NET web application or website, we want to use Microsoft Web Developer. There are a couple of reasons for it. The most important reason is that when you use Microsoft Visual Web Developer, it contains a lot of tools that would make it a lot faster and easier for us to develop web pages and websites and web applications. In a sense, the Microsoft Web Developer comes with a lot of server control visual tools that would allow you to locate and place the server controls and HTML controls and client-side controls, such as buttons, text editors, text boxes, check boxes within your web pages. Makes it easier to control your web application and website, essentially, by allowing you to organize your website. And it makes the development of websites a lot faster, rather than just hard coding all of your web documents and ASP documents within a text editor. Another reason is that when you use and install Microsoft Visual Web Developer, and as a part of this installation you have the option of using Microsoft SQL Server, of course the Express edition, which is free, it will allow you to basically install the SQL Server, which is essential when you are dealing with data processing and dynamic data manipulation. You will need the SQL Server, and as a part of installation you can have the option of installing SQL Server if you don't have it already installed. The third reason that I want to talk about using Microsoft Visual Web Developer in developing websites is that when you develop your programs and websites within this package, it will allow you to automatically test your websites on a web server, basically a virtual web server that it creates and maintains on your machine, and you won't have to have an actual web server to publish your web applications and your websites, to check them, debug them, and see whether or not they're working. Of course, the debugging is another reason, another important reason for using Microsoft Visual Web Developer. So to install the developer, first off, we will look for Visual Web Developer 2010 Express Edition. Express Edition is free, and it comes with many of the features that the actual professional version of Microsoft Visual Studio has for developing websites. And within this class, we use the features that are essentially a part of the Express edition of Visual Web Developer, and we don't have to buy or purchase the professional version. And An installation of this software is fairly simple, and I'll show you how to do that. Using this Visual Web Developer, we can create ASP.NET websites and web pages, and I will show you in the rest of this semester how we write ASP.NET web programs. We can develop HTML pages, so if you don't even have to or want to create active server pages, you still can use Microsoft Visual Web Developer and all its tools, or essentially at least client-side tools, to develop HTML pages. You can manipulate and control your cascading style sheets or CSS files and styling documentations with Microsoft Visual Web Developer to maintain a structured web page document. You can create XML files, you can create comments in XML, you can create JavaScript codes, essentially on client-side programming, and of course ASP codes would allow you to perform perform your server-side programming, and other types of files that can be used on the web, such as database files, database application files, and many others, which we'll study some of them in this semester. Now, before I show you how to manage and create and maintain websites and create website applications, let me just show you how you can actually download and install this this software package. Getting the Visual Web Developer is fairly simple. All you need to do is to go online and go on the Microsoft website, look for the Express edition of your of Microsoft's softwares and packages, and download and install the Visual Web Developer 2010 Express edition. When you do that, make sure that you will also install SQL Server 2008 Express edition as an option that it will allow you to do that. And if you already installed it, you will not have to, the option would not appear on your installer. Okay, so to install the software, you need to go to http://microsoft.com/express, and when you go on this website, the website looks like this. And what you need to do is to go to the web platform and click on the web platform and install the web platform. And the web platform allows you to install Visual Web Developer, SQL Server Express Edition, Silverlight Tools, IIS, and ASP.NET extensions if you need to have them. So go ahead and click on Install, and it will take you to the downloading of Visual Web downloading Web Platform installer. I actually don't remember, but I believe that I already have it. But if you don't, you just click on OK and press or click on Yes, and it would download your web developer, your web platform products. When you click on the web platform products, it would ask you to install, and what you need to do, I already have installed this platform here. You will have the options for Visual Web Developer 2010 Express Edition. It already tells me that it has installed it, and if not, it would show you a list of products to install, and the products that you could install, I believe that are the SQL database that you need to install. You need to install your web server as an option, and also you need to install the ASP.NET. So basically, I believe that it will give you about 3 or 4 choices to install, and what you need to do is to click on the web developer and the SQL server. And once you do that, it would just automatically go ahead and install. It might ask you whether or not you want to install the dependencies, and if so, accept that and install all the dependencies. So when you perform the installation, it would ask you to restart your computer. So you restart your machine, and then you can start working with your Microsoft Visual Web Developer. Once you installed your Visual Web Developer, you could use this software to create websites, to create web applications, add new items to your web application or website, or basically add existing items, manage your website, create subfolders and for codes or for different types of resources that you would require for your website. And Microsoft Visual Web Developer keeps everything organized and manages your codes and your web documents and server side and also client side documents, and allow you to perform all these applications. So to show you how it works, let me just go ahead and show you how I can run this software. I'm using Windows 7. I could also show you how to work with Windows XP. If you can't get to it, just send me an email, and I will create a quick video of running the developer under Microsoft Windows XP. I presume everybody knows the steps to run programs. It's essentially a program. So you click on all programs, you go all the way down to Microsoft Visual Studio 2010 Express Edition, and then you click on Microsoft Visual Web Developer 2010 Express. That brings up the application, Microsoft Visual Web Developer. So just to make a quick note as to what is in the opening page of your Microsoft Visual Web Developer. This is the start page. Essentially it's an HTML page, and it gives you shortcuts for essentially most of the frequently used items. There are two shortcuts for projects and two shortcuts for websites. A little later on I will discuss a little bit about the differences between probably next week I will give you an introduction about the differences between a web project and a web site application. But in a nutshell, website applications, which are the right-hand side links here on the opening page, are essentially folders that contain all the documentation, codes, and files that are related to your website. Web projects, on the other hand, which are the left-hand side links, refer to actual projects that contain that require compilation before you deploy your application. I'll discuss a little bit more about the differences between these two. But for now, let's just focus on the website options. You can create a new website by clicking on New Website, or you can open an already existing website by clicking on Open Website. Some of your recent projects that you might already have been working with are on the recent projects links, and you can click on them. If you want to learn more about the Visual Web Developer Express Edition, you can go through these learning centers and news from the Microsoft website, or you can upgrade your Visual Web Developer. Now, from the opening page, as you see, to the right hand side there's the Solution Explorer. The Solution Explorer is the place that the information and about or essentially icons of your website or your web applications will be located. You will have the main folder or the main location or the root of your website or web application on top when you have it open, and then within that web application folder or website folder you will have the subfolders and subfiles that contain all of the files and folders that are within your web application. To the left hand side you see a toolbox window, and the toolbox window, depending on whether you're in the source code of your web pages, or you're on the design view of your web pages, you will have access to several tools. Some of them are shared between the two, some are not. On top, you will see all the menus that essentially you'll be working with while you're creating your web applications, starting from File, that contains icons for creating new projects, creating new websites, creating new files if you want to add a single HTML or ASP or any other types of files, CSS, database files and stuff like that. You can open existing projects and existing websites, or open a single file. You can close the options that are open, the projects and files that are open. You can save them, you can print your applications, and of course you can have access to your recent files. And as you can see, the recent files may contain ASPX files with ASPX extension, that's ASP.NET 4.0 files. Each of these files may have also their own source code, which are basically the one that I'm pointing at is written in C#, and you may have HTML files that I haven't had recently opened. So, and also recently used projects or solutions that you could automatically open within your Solution Explorer. Of course, you'll have the edit option, undoing, redoing changes, copying and cutting and pasting of your codes and your HTML tags and everything. The view option also allows you to view various menus and various toolbars that you may be using. The debug options allows you to debug your source codes and your HTML files and your ASP files. You can have, depending on where you are on your web application or website, you will have various tools at your disposal to work with. And throughout the semester, we just talk about them. Of course, the window option allows you to open multiple windows, to have them basically dock or undock from the main window of Visual Web Developer, to work with several if you're comfortable using on several windows at the same time. And if you have any questions, you can access the help files. And the MSDN is the place to look for further information about controls, objects, options, and anything that you need to do while you're developing your ASP files, which are not in the written documentation, such as books and materials that you already have access to. One important note just as to register your product. When you install your product, make sure that you will register it. If you don't, after a couple of days, probably when you open your application, it asks you for the registration code. It is a free process. Just click to register product, and then go on the Microsoft website, put your information, and then they would email you back with the registration code, and then you type in your registration code in the appropriate place, and at that point you will have free access to your application. So I'll go back to the PowerPoint. I'll just talk a little bit more about topics that you will see here, and then I'll create a sample HTML web page and a sample ASPX web page. And I won't go to the details of the tags and the information that I'll put in. We'll study them in the coming weeks, but it will show you how to create simple web pages, and that would help you your first in your first assignment, which is to create a simple web page using your Microsoft Web Developer Express Edition, just for me to make sure that everybody has this software installed. Okay, when you create a website or you open a website, there are two files that your project setting, or essentially your website setting, are stored in. A Visual Studio solution file with an SLN extension is a place that the settings for the projects are are stored, and a solution option or solution user option file (SUO) is a file that the customization options for your projects are stored in, and so you could open any of these solution options or your project solution within your Visual Web Developer, and both of these files will be stored within your project folder. It could be a website folder or a web application folder. The workspace that you work, and I showed you previously, is integrated development environment of Visual Web Developer, and it's essentially the place that what kind of programs that you're using, regardless of what kind of programs you're using, you can use to create and add to files and programs to your applications. As I said, you have, for example, a Visual C# program or Visual C++ 2008. You can use the IDE to open it within the respective program and work with them. So the different and there are two different types of programs that you could you will be referring to. There are projects and solutions. A solution is essentially the bigger picture, and it may contain multiple projects. So the project is the program that you're writing or the web pages or websites that you are developing, and the solution is a conglomerate of multiple projects. It could be even one project, it doesn't matter, but essentially a solution is a bigger picture, is a bigger application or development than a project. So as I showed you, the start page of your application, your Visual Web Developer, essentially contains some links to your projects, links to let you open new projects or websites, links to tutorials and more information on the web, and the upgrades that you will require to use. I already showed you about Solution Explorer window, which was the right-hand side window of your IDE. You could see your projects, your solutions, your files, or individual files in a hierarchical way, and I'll show you how it works and how it looks when I'm creating the first sample web page or website. You'll have a code editor, which is the middle section of your project, and I showed you how it works. You can have a text editor or a CSS editor that you could use for either programming languages or HTML coding, or developing and using and editing your CSS files within that middle section. And to the left, you'd have a toolbar section. When you're creating a website, you will essentially in the source code section, which could either include the source code or the visual look of your websites and web pages, you could program your web pages within the source code file. And once you do that, you compile your website and assemble it. That means that you, if you have a simple HTML website, all it means is that your Visual Web Developer runs a virtual web server and retrieves the request for that web page from the server. And I'll show you in a little while how it looks. If you don't want to do this for simple HTML files, you can just simply go to the folder that file is located at, and then double click on the page. It opens it in your Internet Explorer or Firefox or any other web browser that you may have. If you are using ASP files, if you just double click on the ASP documents from the actual folder, nothing will happen, and it would definitely give you an error, because this ASP folder cannot run on the web browser on the client side. It requires to be sent to a server, a web server, and Visual Web Developer does that for you when you compile the file and you run it. What happens is that it would automatically start up a web server, and which essentially would read the ASP file, will perform the processes that it requires to perform on your local computer, which is the server, also the virtual web server, and then sends the processed version of your file, as I said in the previous lecture, that will be sent out as an HTML file to your web browser, which is now your client side. let's see what else we have here. We have the build menu, and the build menu you can use it, and I'll show you throughout this semester how to use it to build web pages, essentially compile a page or build the whole website and compile all the source files and HTML files and ASP files within one single website project, and show it on your web server, or actually your web browser. When you build a file, your web developer automatically saves it. If you build a project, it will automatically save all the open files within that project. Okay, here there are other windows that I mean, if I talk about them on this slide, you probably would get a little confused, but you will work with these different windows: the output window, error window, compiler error window, and warning messages when you are working with your projects, and you will get a pretty good hands-on experience with these windows, because eventually when we're developing websites, we make errors, make smaller mistakes that are not essentially compilation errors, but rather kind of warnings that might potentially cause problems, and we will see those things as we move along and develop our websites. Alright, so the technique that we will use to essentially test our websites that we create is to basically employ the web server that comes with the web developer, and it's called an ASP.NET development server. It's a virtual server that your web developer creates and basically installs on your computer. And this basic web server can be used to test your website on your local machine, as opposed to having to publish your website with all the ASP files and any other resource documents and HTTP files that you have over an external web server, and test them basically externally. This ASP.NET development server is specifically designed to run under a local host, and local host basically is your machine, or the name of the local computer that you are working on. To run a website with the ASP.NET development server, all you need to do is to select the debug menu and then select the start without debugging command, and I'll show you shortly how it works. So here I am in the Microsoft Web Developer. I clicked Open Website, and now I'm looking at the websites that I have created, and this is just a sample website. So I click on the main folder of the website, and it loads the website into the Microsoft Web Developer integrated document environment, or IDE. So I need to wait a little bit, and here is the website is loaded, and it loads all the files that I need to work with. So to run this website, I can go and click on debug from the top menu, and then either start debugging the website, or build the website and then start without debugging, or I could simply click on view website in browser. If it's an HTML file, it runs it in browser. Or I could press Control and F5, and the Control and F5 essentially will run this website on the local host. So if I press Control and F5, you will see that the website is run on the local host. Now there are a few things that I would like to talk to you about the setup of this website on the local host, and how it's been shown. So let's go back to the presentation. Here we are back at our presentation. So what happens when you start your website or your web application your web developer would launch the ASP.NET development server, and this server basically will run your website on the local host machine and selects a random port number, assigns a random port number to the location of this website on your local host. In TCP/IP, which was the protocol that we discussed a little earlier, a port represents the end point of a connection between a client and a server. So if you think of your website being hosted on a server, and then you have the client machine or the client web browser that I just launched my website on, the point that connects these two processes physically on the server or a web server is the port, and that's the random number that's assigned to it. The numbers for the ports can range from 0 to 65,536, and ports 0 to 1024 are reserved for special purposes and well-known protocols. For example, the HTTP or Hypertext Transfer Protocol that we were talking about in the beginning of the lecture has the reserved port number 80. And if you want to access a web page on the HTTP protocol, you either can use the local host or actually the host name followed by a colon followed by the port number 80, or you can just simply eliminate the port number, and your web server would automatically know that it has to look for a specific port, which is actually a designed HTTP port on the web server. So now back at our example. When I ran the website that I created here, and I want to show it on the browser, and here's the browser. The name of the page is state.asp.aspx, and it was basically from this website, ASP site ch2, and it's run on my local host, which is my web server that the Microsoft Visual Web Developer virtually runs on my machine, and the port number that is assigned to this website is 53251. So that's how your web server essentially runs your websites on the local host server in the client server architecture that we discussed earlier. And my client is this web browser. My Mozilla Firefox web browser is my client, and localhost is my server, and Microsoft Visual Web Developer ASP.NET Development Server is the web server that connects these two together and essentially runs my website. Alright, after this little playing with the web server and seeing how it actually works, before I move on and start writing my first web page, let me talk about the different types of HTML markup languages that existed from the beginning all the way through the late 90s, and the documents that web developer usually creates for us and we work with. So HTML first became an internet standard in 1993, which was actually 2 years after Berners-Lee started the language and essentially started the web concept. And the release version was 1. The next version of HTML was HTML 2.0, and it was released a year later and included many HTML features such as forms and the ability to make boldface fonts and italicizing the fonts and all that kind of visual formatting of the web documents. Many of these standard features, though, still are in use today. However, nowadays, when we're working with more advanced web development features, we try to adhere to the latest standards, although they are downward compatible, and we could use the tags that are supported within the previous versions of HTML, with the exception of the ones that are deprecated, and I'll talk about them a little later. We try to use the latest versions. In HTML 2.0, still concepts like tables and forms, actually frames, were not available, and the first release of the HTML that allowed such formatting tools was 3.2, which was released in 1996. But the current version of HTML that we'll be using is HTML 4.01, and it was released in 1999, and it didn't change in a very long time until the advent of the extensible hypertext markup language, or XHTML, which is a great extension to the HTML, and it is now widely used as the next generation of markup language for creating pages or web pages for World Wide Web. HTML only was used for presenting web documents on traditional web browsers such as Firefox or Internet Explorer. However, the issue is that today's many different types of devices and applications besides computers would access the web, such as PDAs, iPhones, iPods, and all different types of machines and devices. And to support such applications, HTML that was not enough, because the design of the HTML was basically a PC-based design, and it was targeted for specifically for limited use in web browsers within the computers. In order to make an application capable of retrieving and processing HTML and XHTML documents, we need to have a user agent, and the XHTML was the language that was designed to support traditional web browsers, as well as the user agents within other types of applications, like mobile phones and PDAs and such. So we can write HTML documents for user agents, especially for computer user agents or web browsers, to retrieve the HTML markup tags and languages and display them on the screen. The problem that HTML language essentially has is that both the data and the way that the data is supposed to be displayed on the screen is written within the tags and elements of the HTML. So, for example, you can define a tag called font, and then you can define the font family, the color of your font that you're using within a paragraph, for example, or even the paragraph itself. You can define all these things within your HTML document. Now, your web browsers can parse this document and parse out the tags and break the tags down and process them and then show them on your devices or your screens. However, your other user devices or user agents, such as a PDA, for example, they cannot display, for example, colored text. They only can display grayscale or black and white text. So for this reason, and also because they're somehow limited in terms of the processing, they cannot process all of the HTML elements and handle both the display of the data as well as the formatting of the data. For this reason, the XHTML language became popular, and essentially what it does is that it includes within the code itself a reference to the definition of the formatting and the types of the data and the display. And when the PDA, for example, or other types of limited devices are reading the XHTML files, they could access the formatting of the data externally, as opposed to processing the data themselves, and therefore they will be able to process and display the web documents which use XHTML language. All of the websites, or a majority of the websites that we will work with in this class, uses the XHTML markup language. Now let's talk about the XHTML document type definitions. We call a document well-formed when it actually conforms with to the rules and requirements of XHTML. There are several requirements that a well-formed document must have, and one of them is that it must include a tag called doc type, which is the declaration of the document type of the page. It must also include tags that represent the HTML body of the part of the document, and it must also have the head and the body elements of the document. The doc type declaration belongs to the first line of any XHTML document, and it determines the type of the document with which the definition with which the document will comply. A document type definition, or a DTD, defines the elements and attributes that can be used in a document, along with the rules and that the document must follow when it includes them. There are three types of DTDs, or document type definitions, with XHTML documents: transitional, frameset, and strict. And I'll talk about these three document types a little later. To understand the differences among these three types of documents, we need to understand the concepts of deprecated HTML elements. One of the goals of XHTML was to separate the way that HTML was structured from the way that the web pages were parsed to be displayed in the browser. To accomplish this goal, W3C, or the World Wide Web Consortium, decided that several commonly used HTML elements and attributes for display and formatting should not be used in XHTML 1.0, which was the first version of XHTML. Instead of using this HTML elements and attributes for displaying and formatting web pages, the WC3 recommended cascading style sheets, which we will see next week. Which are essentially styles that we define for the visual display of our data, and they will be encoded and represented in a different document or sub-document. There are some elements that are deprecated in XHTML, and this table essentially shows those elements and what they used to do in HTML files and documents, and they are not to be used in XHTML documents. The applet tag is essentially a tag that represents a Java applet, and it executes that Java applet that is within or presented within this tag. Or this element. Base font specifies the base font size of your text. The center element centers your text. DIR element defines a directory list, and so on. So all the way to the U element, which underlines the text. The three different types of document type definitions for XHTML documents are distinguished in part by the degree to which they essentially accept or reject deprecated HTML elements. The three types are transitional DTD, frameset DTD, and strict DTD. The transitional document type definition allows the user to use deprecated style elements in the HTML file. Essentially, you can include your HTML documents within your XHTML documents and not worry about the deprecated elements. The frameset document type definition is identical to transitional document type definition, but it also allows you to use frame sets and frame elements, and this would allow you to break down or split your browsers into two or more frames, and within each of those frames you can have a separate XHTML document. For example, if you think of an HTML website or web page that has a menu list to the left, and then the main pages will be displayed in the middle, and then it has a head bar and a footer bar. You can split your screen to a header frame, a footer frame, a menu frame, and a main frame, and each of those can contain separate HTML or XHTML files, essentially. And the strict document type definition eliminates all of the elements that were deprecated in a transitional and frame set DTDs, and the doc type essentially includes the word strict. So just let me show you how it looks like in our example. Okay, this is the example window of the ASP.NET file that I have. If I click on the source, and as you can see, the doc type is the second page or the second line within this document. It tells me that the doc type is basically inherited from a HTML markup language, and it's a public essentially a public class, and I'll talk about the object-oriented paradigm and the definitions of classes and objects. And each of your web pages and web documents are essentially an object, and they are public. And the document type definition that this document represents is XHTML 1.0, and is transitional, and it's written in English. And then the document type definition that is represented by this data is also given to the document type through the HTTP address, or the web address of transitional DDT from the W3 website. As I said, the well-formed documents should include also the HTML document or element, which is essentially encoded or put between the tags HTML and //HTML. So anything that's represented by this XHTML document is written within the HTML tag. It has also a head element that contains the title of the page and the style that this page will be represented with, and it also includes the body of the page, and the body of the page contains a form and all of the formatting and essentially the calendar that was shown on the rendered page from the web server. And you can see the actual ASP.NET page here on my browser. So this is a quick review of what a well-formed document will essentially have to have. As I said, it must include in the declaration the doc type declaration, HTML element, head element, and body element. It must use HTML element as its root element. That means that all of the other elements should be represented within the HTML tags. The XHTML documents, or well-formed documents, are case sensitive, and as I showed you last week when I created my first sample HTML document, the HTML documents were not case sensitive. So if I wanted to use a boldface font, I would use the tag B with upper or capital B or lowercase b, and it wouldn't matter. For the XHTML or well-formed documents, you have to have all of the elements in the lowercase. If you put them in capitalized or bold case or uppercase, the XHTML will not be able to render them accordingly. Another difference between HTML and XHTML elements is that in your well-formed documents, any tag that you put, it would have to have a closing tag, whereas the general HTML documents, for the tags that you don't want to close them, or you don't have a closing tag, you can just put just the tag itself. For example, let's imagine that we want to include a horizontal line. If you remember from the previous example, the from last week, the horizontal line tag is HR. If I put just the horizontal line HR without closing it, and as you see, the web developer does not allow me to just put the horizontal line without closing it. It has to close the horizontal line, and it will do that because it has to conform with the standard of HTML. Whereas in a general HTML document, you would just simply put HR and in brackets, and that would take care of it, and you wouldn't have to close this this singular element essentially. Otherwise, your page will not be rendered efficiently. All of your empty tags also must be closed, as I just showed you, and you have to nest your XHTML elements properly. For example, if you have a italicized tag and a boldface tag, let's say that I have a boldface tag and I put some text in it, and if I want to italicize something within this boldface, the nesting should be basically done properly. If I remove the closing tag of italicized element outside of the bold element, the page will not be rendered properly. Okay, here we are back at our Microsoft Visual Web Developer 2010 Express Edition, and now, after my long and boring talk with all those PowerPoint slides and things, let's have some web development fun. So let's start by clicking on File and clicking New Website, or alternatively you can press Shift Alt and letter N to create a new website. When you click on a new website, your website wizard will show up, and it will ask you what kind of website you want to create, right? So in this page you have actually four sections. The leftmost section is the section that allows you to create templates, and that's basically the coding language and template that you would prefer. I prefer Visual C#, so I click on Visual C#. If you want Visual Basic, go ahead and click on Visual Basic, and that would make your website a Visual Basic or Visual C# active server page. Then in the middle section you have essentially multiple templates to choose from. What we are interested in at the moment is ASP.NET templates for ASP.NET websites. You can have ASP.NET dynamic websites that will allow you to essentially manipulate online databases, as well as the WCF services, which are essentially the web services, web component services that you will use, and we'll later on in the semester, if we get to it, we'll do that. Now go ahead and click on ASP.NET empty website and confirm that you have the Visual C# and an empty website that you wanted to create. The location of your web can be determined by file system. That tells you that the location of this website will be on your local hard drive of your local host or your machine. It could be an HTTP server or it could be an FTP server. For this class we use file system, and when you click on file system, you will see that the actual location of this website is c:\users\myname\documents\Visual Studio 2010 /websites/website1. You could change the location by clicking on browse, or you could just modify the name of your website. Let's call this website My First Website, and then click OK. and here the developer will create an empty website for us. Now at this point, I don't have anything in my website, and my first website is a folder that points to the root of my website, which is empty. It doesn't have anything in it, and except for a file that contains the configurations of my website, which tells me, if I open it, you can see that it tells me that the XML version that I'm going to be using here is version 1.0, and the .NET framework that I will be using is 4.0. The debugging property or setting for my file is my website is false. That means that when I compile it, I can't really debug it. When I debug it, it essentially goes to just run it. And I will talk about these tags within the web config and also the documents themselves a little later. So just don't be scared by these things. Now, in order to create a website, and I will just create a simple HTML website, just regular documents, I can right click on the root of my website, which is the C / all those folders / my first website. I can right click on it, and then I can click a new item. I can add an existing item to it. I can create a new folder. For example, if I have images and I want to organize my website such that all the images are in the images folder, I can add a new folder and add my files to it. I can add specific ASP.NET folders, and we'll talk about some of these things later on in the class. In particular, an APP code which contains all of my ASP C# codes, and the theme folder that is essentially that contains the themes that I want to create for my website. I can add a lot of different things, and or basically look at the properties of my web page. Right now I'm interested in just adding a new HTML file to my document and create the documents. So I click on add new item, and again the wizard comes in. To the left I again see all my templates. I want to make sure that it is a Visual C#, although for HTML files it really doesn't matter. And as you see, you can add a lot of different components to your ASP.NET file or website. A web form is an ASP.NET or ASPX file that will contain your XHTML documents, and it is already accessible for C# coding. And as you see, when you click on the web form, at the bottom of this page you have an option of either selecting a master page down here, or and also placing your code or your ASP.NET code within a separate file, which is called the code behind file. And in some cases, when your codes are basically big enough that might clutter your ASP.NET file, you definitely want to organize them within the code behind file. Now, we're not talking about ASP.NET, so don't worry about that. Scroll down all the way to HTML page, and that looks like a web page icon. So click on the HTML page, and at the bottom you'll see the name of this page is HTML, and the extension is .htm. I want to call this my home page, or let's call it the default page, .htm. And it automatically disables the place code in separate file and select master page, because for simple HTML files you cannot use these options. Now click on add. So when the web developer creates this HTML file, it automatically includes the doc type, as I said, for the document type definition. It represents the HTML 1.0 transitional English, and it points to the location where the file or the document type definitions are. And also it automatically includes the HTML tag or HTML element and includes the head element and the body element to this website. And in the solution browser, you will see that the default .htm file is added to the website. Now, let's run this website in browser. Click on Run View in Browser. And as you see, the ASP.NET Development Server runs, and it puts a port, or it activates a port that is now, as you see, it's a random number. It's a different number than the number that I had previously for the previous example. And it puts on it opens this port 64295 from the local host to access to my first website site. And if you look at this website, you'll see that it's empty. And at the title of this page or this tab will be basically the location of your file, which is in the URL up here from your address bar, and you won't see any window titles for this file. So let's go back to our HTML document, and let's add a title. Let's call it Hello World. Now, since this is not a web application or website application, it doesn't have any code. I don't need to compile this code. All I need to do is to save this code, go to my browser, it's at the same location essentially, and press F5, and that would refresh this HTML file. We can't do this with the ASP.NET files that we'll be creating later on this semester that contain lots of C# codes, because you would have to compile them first in order to be able to see the result. But for our HTML documentation, we don't have any any server-side processing. So just refresh the file on the browser, and you see that the title of this tab and the title of your browser window changed to the title that we created within the HTML document. Let's add some text to this document, and I will start talking about HTML in more detail later on, and starting next week. But today, let's have it a very simple and straightforward HTML document. I would like to have a horizontal line first at the top of this page, and then I would like to have a paragraph that just is like an introductory paragraph, and then I'd like to have another paragraph with multiple lines, and then I want to end my document with just a simple horizontal line. So the top horizontal line, I can use the HR element, and the IntelliSense technology of Microsoft Visual Web Developer, as I type in the tags and the information that I want to put in my document, it would recognize what I might want to add to the document, and it automatically points them to me, and I can just simply either close this or press Shift closing bracket, and it automatically closes this document for me, this tag for me. I'll go back to my web browser and I refresh after I saved, and you see that the first horizontal line is added. I want to have another horizontal line at the end of my document, so I just put the horizontal line and I close it, and as you can see, it self-closes the horizontal line because it's an empty tag. It doesn't have any extra information within. Save the file and refresh, and you see the two horizontal line. Let's add our paragraphs to in between this horizontal line. So let's have the first paragraph is talking about steps for taking actions against global warming, colon. So notice this is a well-formed XHTML document. It has to, each tag has to close. The HR tags were empty tags and they self-closed, as you can see from this line. And the paragraph tag is not an empty tag, so I put the bracket P as the beginning of the paragraph and bracket /P at the end of the paragraph. If I don't put the bracket /P, my document will not be well formed, and I will not be able to predict the behavior of my document within the web browser. Let's run this document in the web browser again. So I have two ways to do this. I can either click on this button here, or I can press Ctrl Shift and W, that runs it in the browser, or I can save it because it's an HTML document with no code. It doesn't require any compilation, and then I go on the location for my website or web page, which is localhost followed by the port followed by the main folder of the website and the page where it's located at. So here's the first line that I added, and now I need to add steps. Let's create another paragraph. And the web developer is neat in a sense that it actually automatically adds the closing tags, so I won't have to really worry about them unless I accidentally erase them. So let's have step 1. Drive a well-tuned car with properly inflated tires. Step 2, buy local and organic produce. Step 3, support clean renewable energy, and close the paragraph. I intentionally put a couple of mistakes in here, and I will show you what the problem will be. Let's save the file. Alternatively, I can click on the save button here, and then I can run my file in the browser. When the file is run in the browser, a new tab is created for the new file, and it has the steps. However, the steps are within a paragraph, but they follow each other, and they do not include any returns at the end of each line. Although I had included these returns in my source editing window. If you remember from last year, and if you already are familiar with HTML, you will probably have noticed that that any formatting that I make in my source code, it does not be interpreted within my HTML. Everything has to, the formatting have to be done using tags, and the tag for the return at the end of each line is basically BR tag. It's an empty tag, and it has to be self-closed, and the web developer automatically closes these tags for me by adding a self-closing or a / closing bracket at the end of this tag. So here I basically corrected the mistake, and I will run this in the browser. If I forgot to save this file or any open files within this this website, when I intend to run it in the browser, it will ask me whether or not I want to save this file. I would have to click yes, and now we can see that these 3 steps are separated by separate lines, because I essentially added this the BR tags at the end of the lines. So so here's just a simple example of creating your websites or your HTML websites. I don't have any style sheet formatting or anything like that. I could use the design view of my my document or my HTML document here by clicking on the design, and then at that design I could use formatting documents like pretty much like Microsoft Word. And if I want to make this step, for example, step 1 boldface, I need to select this whole word and then click on bold from the shortcut icons, and that would make this step bold in the design file, in the design view. And if you go back to the source view, you will see that it included the step 1 within a strong tag, which is basically a phrasing tag. I'll talk about it next week. That makes a tag boldface. It does not use the B tag because the B tag is essentially a text-based formatting, and if you are using this document in a, for example, a TTY device that would probably use different types of visual or audio representation of this text, it will not be able to interpret that. But the strong tag is a phrase tag that many devices have a way to represent this tag this text differently from the general formatting of the text. So if you would like to hard code this page, you could add the strong tag, and IntelliSense technology would automatically allow you to choose the tag that you're interested in adding, and then you could add the strong tag to your source code. And this way, when you run your web page, the parts of the code that you included within the strong element will become boldface. Alright, so this concludes this lecture. It's a long lecture, I understand, and I will put the homework assignment on the blackboard, and it will include some questions to answer, and a small website that you create like this. It could be anything, as simple as this website that I just created here, or you could add images or hyperlink texts, hyperlinks to your website. If you are familiar with those tags and elements in HTML, so you will essentially by the due date submit this homework, and I will know if everybody was able to install the Visual Web Developer and the SQL Server properly on their computers. So this will conclude our class tonight, and or today for that matter. And in summary, what we did in this first 2 weeks was we learned about the World Wide Web and its origin and creations. We learned about 2- and 3-tier client-server architectures that govern the web. We learn about client and server-side scripting languages, such as JavaScript as a client-side and ASP or Active Server Pages as a server-side scripting language. We learn about the integrated development environment or IDE of Visual Studio that includes Visual C++, Visual C#, and Visual Basic, and Visual Web Developer. We installed and used Visual Web Developer that includes ASP.NET Development Server for testing our websites. We learn about XHTML as a standard markup language for web pages, and the data type or document type definition that allows us to define the types of HTML or XHTML documents we are using to show on the client web browsers. And then I showed you a couple of examples and tutorials as to how to create simple HTML websites with Microsoft Visual Web Developer, and I showed you a little bit about the environment itself, and I encourage you to just go on and you know, get your hands dirty with the Visual Web Developer, and basically experimenting with these kinds of softwares. The best way to learn about programming the web documents and web pages and websites. So that will be it for this week. Next week I'll start working and talking about cascading style sheets and more advanced HTML topics, and then the rest of the semester we will focus on studying active server pages, learning about server controls, learning about programming C# for web development, and then more advanced topics in ASP development, such as creating skins and user-defined templates for websites, creating uniform-looking websites, validating user inputs, accessing data from databases, and things like that, which will be a very interesting work with websites. Okay, I congratulate you for surviving this long week, and I will talk to you next week about HTML and cascading style sheets. Thank you very much, and have a great week.